So let me share my screen. And here, away we go. Okay, so let's start Siman Kuf Mem Beis, the next tshuva. Mi shehuzak richbo b'Shabbat, hayim yachol legabot et hanezek. If someone's car was damaged on Shabbos, are you allowed to collect damages for damage that was caused on Shabbos? Let's see what the potential issue is. Echanti et richbi be'erev Shabbos liad beit hacholim. I parked my car on Friday afternoon next to the hospital. Ucheshechazarti b'motzei Shabbat, raiti sha'mechonit kibla maka mimechonit cholefet. That when I got back to the car Saturday night, I noticed that the car got hit from a passing car. Ba'ofen shahanezek vaday eira b'yom Shabbat. So I can clearly see that it happened on Shabbos day. Maybe if they have water in there. Thank you. That would be great. La'achar yomayim, is it hot?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. La'achar yomayim kibalti telephone mibal hamechonit shehizik et hamechonit shali. A couple days later, I got a telephone call from the guy who did it. And he said, thank you so much. He said, I damaged your phone. And he told me he wants to compensate me. It's very nice. It can happen in Israel, Is it permissible for me to take payment from this non-observant Jew? What's the problem? Yeah, what's the problem? Can you think of any potential issues?
Something that was done on Machal Shabbos. I take it much.
Your bet.
And run.
Yeah.
As the old movie said.
Yeah.
Right, he may have been there even for.
Maybe he's a doctor.
Acceptable.
Yeah, maybe he's a doctor and he needed to drive.
Or even a
his
family
wife was
member
giving
of a
birth and he
patient
was
that-
driving 100 kilometers an hour in the parking lot just to get to the triage.
It's also possible that he's just not a religious Jew. What's the problem? Is it, like Paul suggested, getting benefit from someone else's malacha? I'm not sure
It's the
that
only thing I can think of as
that's
possible.
called benefit. It's getting restitution for damages.
But yeah, it's the cost of damages.
Okay. All right, let's
You're no better off as a result of it. You're just back in your place.
well, and then the question is, what if you are better off? Like, it's a clunker anyway. Okay.
I'm guessing that the guy can find out who the cab belonged to after Shabbos. He had somewhere tracing number plates or license plates.
Yeah, that is interesting, eh? Could be he took a picture of them. Okay, Hagemara omeret b'masechet ktubot, hagonev kis b'Shabbos chayev, shekvar nitchayev b'geneva, kodem sheyavo lidei iser skila. So let's look at something that the Gemara says. If you steal someone's money bag, their wallet, on Shabbos, you have to make restitution, because even though the act itself may have involved malacha, for which you're chayiv skila, you're chayiv the death penalty, and we normally have a principle of kimle b'derabba binei, that we always give a person the higher penalty, okay? And we exempt him from the lower penalty. Nonetheless, in this case, you're still liable because the act of theft preceded, they weren't simultaneous. The act of theft preceded the act of Shabbos violation. Aval im lo hikbi et hakis v'lo kana oto kigon shezeh hayasak gadol. In other words, basically what you're doing is you're carrying it outside, right? There's no eruv. You're carrying it outside. So you stole the wallet by picking it up before you walked out of the house. But let's say you lifted up this bag and you didn't acquire it because it was, let's say, a really large bag and you had to drag it on the floor. V'haganav garar oto ala ritzpad shahotzi oto mirishut habe'alim lirishut harabim. And you schlepped it so that the very act of theft happens simultaneous to transferring it from a private domain to a public domain. V'nimtza shehageneva v'hachilul Shabbos bo'u biyachad. So they happened at the same time. Ba'ofen kazeh haganav patur mehatashlumin. In that scenario, the ganav doesn't have to pay because he's liable at the same time for a much more serious offense. V'hatam bazeh hu kevin sheha'onesh shel chilul Shabbos hu skila v'ha'onesh shel geneva zeh tashlum mamon. He says the reason is because the penalty for Shabbos is death by stoning. The penalty for Geneva is pay. V'yesh lanu klal shelo mitchayev adam al shtei risha'ayot. We have a principle that a person there's no double jeopardy. You cannot be held liable for two things at the same time. K'moshe kasuf b'Torah k'dei rish'ato b'mispar. According to his wickedness, by number, meaning risha'a echat atam chayvo ve'in atam chayvo shtei risha'ayot, that you can hold a person liable for one evil deed, but not for two committed at the same time. V'lochein mechayivim oto al haShabbos shehi yoter chamura migezel, and therefore we hold him liable for the Shabbos violation. Uchlal gadol biyadenu kimlei b'derabah minei. And the general rule is you always go with the higher penalty and you dispense with the lower penalty. Dahainu sheyesh lahanisho ba'onesh hayoter chamur. Al keinu chayav al haShabbos upater al hageneva. And this is also paskined as the Makor Baruch says in the Shulchan Aruch, and we don't have to go through that whole thing. So the question now is, Vimkein benidon didan shahanahag chilel Shabbat b'shah shehizik et harechev. The driver was violating Shabbos at that very moment that he caused the damage. Yesh lomar bazeh kimlei b'derabah minei upater mitashlumei hanezek. On the one hand, you could argue that since he's liable for the death penalty while he's driving, we should also hold him, therefore, putter for the damages.
I understand from the person who's doing the driving and the damage perspective, about double jeopardy, but how does that help the victim?
It doesn't help the
And
victim.
it doesn't matter.
We don't always have justice in halacha. God is the ultimate justice
So there was probably
maker.
some reason one could say why the person's car was damaged.
Yeah.
Well, this principle is spelled out in Moral Ketubah, we were just studying the George.
Oh,
So that if the person steals on Shabbos and takes it out of the house, there's a
Yeah.
name for that. There's a name for that.
Kimle b'derabah minei. That right. That's what we just read. It's right there on the screen. Yeah.
Rabbi,
You see the words? Kimle b'derabah minei. There you go.
Rabbi, doesn't he
Yes,
need?
yes, Marvin.
Doesn't he need to get skila? Maybe it's a suffix whether he gets skila or not, because doesn't he need edim and hasra and halacha to get that?
Ah, okay. What about the fact that he cannot be punished for his Shabbos violation because there were no witnesses, there was no forewarning,
Does it matter now that there's no based in and we don't?
and there's no based in, and we don't carry out the death penalty? What about the fact that he, so maybe we would argue that no, just the fact that you're liable in heaven will make you patur to pay. But what about the fact that we may judge him as a tinok shenishpa? In which case, remember, we learned that, in which case we wouldn't hold him liable for skew.
And then he'd be liable for the damages.
Yeah,
Maybe this time he wouldn't want that exception.
that's right.
Because he doesn't believe it anyway.
Was taking it outside the area, going outside the throne, what was that?
The case of the Gemara,
Yeah.
you took it from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim.
So if there's an error, if when error was made.
Yeah, the error, then that
that
case would not be relevant. Yeah. Okay. Aval, ba'ofen shahamazik. And by the way, how do we know that at that moment that he scraped against the car, he was violating Shabbos? We don't know if his foot was on the accelerator at that exact moment. Maybe he was coasting.
That's forensic
He already turned the car on.
doesn't
But
matter.
that was before.
But it's.
That was before.
It has to be at the same time.
But no, that's two acts. Right? It's a question of two acts. Which one? It's not a question of which come first. It's a question of the two acts, which is the greater of the two.
But they have to be
can't-
simultaneous. They have to be
You're not
simultaneous.
violating at the time.
If they're not simultaneous, then even though you violated Shabbos 2 seconds ago,
But let's say you started driving from home.
yeah, but every step on the accelerator is a new Shabbos violation.
Mhm.
And if he steps on the brake.
That's also a Shabbos
But if
violation.
he's just coasting, he's not.
But it depends on how much damage you've done.
So you can get out of anything.
All right.
I'm sure he's more consistent about the damage to his car than damage to his neshama.
Okay. But I have a feeling that he's gonna say that he's still liable. But anyway. Aval ba'ofen shahamazik hifna tanizik.
Place your bets.
Yeah, lechevret habituach shelo kedei legabot mehem ma shenizak. He says, but here's the thing. People have automobile insurance. And he referred the guy to the insurance company. He contacted the insurance company, put all the parties in touch. וחברת הביטוח של המזיק מתחייבת לשלם על כל הנזקים שנעשו בין בשבת בין ביום חול. The insurance company, as per their contract with the insured, has the obligation to pay for any damages caused by the insured, whether it happened on Shabbos or the weekday. There's no clause. Yeah.
Clause like
your deduction.
Right, yeah.
It's not like snow tires. It doesn't say if
Yeah.
we drive on Shabbos, we're not covering.
That's right. So Yochel Hanizik legabot mehem et hakesef, ki kach hem hitchayvu klape hamazik. So then certainly the damagee could collect money from the insurance company because they indebted themselves to the damaging party, and also there's usually a no-fault insurance, so they would collect from both insurance companies. Okay, let me just get the next packet. 1 second. Hold on. Where did I put it? Okay, hold on a second. Here we go. V'afal pisha hamazik atzmo pater milashalem. Even though you could argue that the mazik himself is pater, mikol makom hachevrat bituach kibla latzmo l'shalem gam ala nizakim ka'ilu. He says, yes, you could argue that the driver himself may be pater, but the insurance company accepted upon itself to pay for all damages. Uchein ma she'omeret haMishnah, matne shoel liot kishomer chinam. A person can raise his level of liability such that even when he's pater, he can make himself chayev. So, for example, I can adjust my level of liability if I negotiate in advance. So, for example, let's say I'm watching an object for you, and normally I would be pater from any loss or damage other than if it's through negligence. But I say I'm going to do you a favor, and I'm going to have the din of a shoel, the din of a borrower, which means that I'm going to be liable even for theft and loss. We can do that. We can negotiate in advance. Lachein ba'ofen kazeh yochel hanizik lekabel et kol hakesef shehuzak mechevret habituach, and therefore it's clear that from collecting from an insurance policy is for sure okay.
So
I'm still unhappy. I'm still unhappy with this. Well, we'll look at the footnote in a second. Yes.
I just wondered whether it has to be in advance for that loss. Can it be at the time the object is lost? And obviously you just specify in advance. You make yourself higher.
You can't be held liable for more if it's after the loss, because that was not negotiated in advance. If
So
a
it does have to
person,
be-
if a person wishes to volunteer, he can do whatever he wants.
If,
That would be gifting. That would be a gift.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure. So he says, Va'ayin b'shut shevive eish sheherich b'nidon didan. I refer you to another sefer called Shevive Eish, that he expands on this discussion. V'dan sham ba'ofen shahamazik ba me'atzmo l'shalem. He talks about a case where the mazik volunteers to pay. Shelichora yiyamuter lakacha b'menu et hakesef, ki even shekimli b'derabim minei havebitur rak b'dinei adam v'lo b'dinei shamayim. And he says a much more simple thing. Let's put aside the insurance for a second. Let's say a guy says, look, I don't want to get insurance companies involved. I don't want to raise my premiums. Yeah. It's a scrape. I know a guy, it'll cost you a few $100. It's worth it for me just to pay you for that. So then is there a problem? According to Rav Sharaga, there's a problem. But in the Sefer Shevivesh, he says that's also not a problem. Because when the Gemara says that the guy who steals on Shabbos is patur from payment, that's b'dinei adam. But it's not b'dinei shamayim. There's still a moral imperative for him to make the damagee whole, like Paul was saying. V'shuv heyir mehad isa b'sanhedrin shayu ganavim shehiziku l'rava v'hayu piturim al pi adin dekim le b'derabah minei u'ba u'lashalem lo v'hu lo kibel mehem. And he also brings a case history. There's a Gemara in Sanhedrin that talks about a similar case where Ganovim stole from Rava, and they were patur because it happened on Shabbos, and we applied the principle of Kimle b'derabah minei, but they volunteered to pay, and Rava refused to take payment from them. Ubiaru hatois v'sham, da'afol pi shehem chayavim l'shalim b'dinei shamayim. So how does Tosfos explain why Rava refused payment? He says, even though they're liable, b'dinei shamayim, mikol makom kevin shehem chashvu shem chayavim ikar hadin, lachein hu lo kibel mehem ayin sham. It's because they thought that they were liable. They thought that they were obligated to pay. And Rava refused to take it because he didn't want them to misunderstand the halacha. So if they would have accepted of themselves that they're patur, but we still want to pay to fulfill our heavenly duty, then Rava would have accepted it. That's the way Tosfos learns the Gemara. V'lachein gam b'nidon didan, afal pisha hamazik ba me'atzmo l'shalem, ein lakachat mimenu, even shu choshev shu chayav me'ikar hadin. And therefore you could make the same argument here. If the guy thinks he's liable, when he's really not, maybe you should refuse payment, because you don't want the guy to misinterpret what Jewish law says. Aval tzideit sham de'imhu echad kazeh shelo ichpat le midinei Torah. But then his conclusion is that if the guy's not religious, he's a chiloni, and he doesn't care what Jewish law has to say about it, he knows that he's supposed to pay. V'holech rak lefi chukot ha'akum, and he goes according to secular law. Yitachein sheyeh mutar lakachat mimenu, ki even shehu notno beratzon ve'in kan nitina b'taut. Then it would be permitted to accept it from him because he's not mistakenly giving you the money. He's doing it because he governs himself according to secular law, not according to Torah law. And the secular law would certainly hold you liable. And therefore, under all circumstances, the end result is it's okay to accept payment from the guy. Okay?
But even worse if he doesn't even call the guy and say that.
Of course it's worse, yeah. There's nothing to talk about then. Sorry, you're right.
The guy's got a scrape on his
Yeah.
car when he comes out.
That's
Yeah,
like,
oh, it's
that's
gone.
like a hit and run, so that's.
So yeah, it's a hit and run.
So at the end of the day, you can't accept the money.
You can accept the money. Easier if it's from the insurance company. That's hands down is not a question.
Yeah.
But in the footnote, we learned that even if it's the guy who wants to go out of the policy, it's also okay, because clearly he's not a religious Jew. He doesn't care about Jewish law, and therefore he just wants to fulfill his obligation according to secular law. and therefore it's perfectly fine to take it from him.
So religious doctors on emergency, you think he scrapes the feather?
Huh? Good question. Religious doctor. So if he learns Daf Yomi and he knows the halacha that he's really putter, but he says, I want to be Yotzei B'dinei Shamayim, I know I'm putter, and I still want to pay you, then you can accept it. But if he's a religious doctor, but he's not so knowledgeable, you would have to explain to him, you are putter. You don't have to pay because of the principle of Imle B'derabba Minei, assuming that your foot was on the accelerator at that moment,
At that time.
which is possible, maybe even probable, who knows? And he says, but I still want to pay you to be Yotzei B'dinei Shamayim, then you'd also be allowed to accept it from him.
If you're insured and you can still accept money for the deductible if he wants to pay. If you go through insurance or not,
Of course you're allowed to. Yeah,
either way, that's out of pocket.
yeah, it's out of pocket.
Yeah, right.
And the guy may have actually a moral obligation to make you whole.
I didn't mention anything about menschlichkeit here. But
Yeah,
I should mention that.
Right, right.
Doesn't-
Well, no.
doesn't
That's
play into it.
no, that's what Dinei Shamayim means. Menschlichkeit Dinei Shamayim. It's the Zel Bazach. What we're basically saying is that God will hold you liable for not doing the menschlich thing, for not doing the ethical thing. Okay, that was pretty straightforward. It's fairly obvious, right? Next, shlichat yeled choyle legan, sending a sick kid to school, to the gan, and the gan is like the kindergarten. Ani isha ovedet ubali bal esek shechayev lohofia be'esek. I am a working woman. My husband is a working man, and we both work hard. Because to make a living. V'yesh lanu yeled begil arba shenimtza began. We have a 4-year-old son. He's in kindergarten. Umeidei pa'am hu choleh umishta'el. And from time to time, he gets sick. What does mishta'el mean? Let's look that up. Coughs. He coughs. V'lifamim yesh lo gam k'tzat chom, and sometimes he has a low-grade fever. U'mechusar bereira ani sholechat oto legan b'cholofan. And I have no choice. I send him to the gan, even when he's a shtickle sick. Ki ein mi sheyishoyer ito babayit. I have no one to leave him with. Ha'im ze mutar al pi ha'alacha. Is this permissible according to Jewish law? Am I violating halacha by exposing the other children and the teachers to sickness? Or am I not?
Or you doing that to your child when they're sick, they shouldn't be going out. Are you being negligent and setting a sick kid out?
It's a cough. It's a cough. It's not like it's something.
Is it parental negligence to leave your kid and he'd be doing the same thing at home as he would be doing if he's in the gan?
I just
You know.
brought this question up to my son, who has his son at daycare and the grandson, and he said that most people, if it's a low level cold, they do send the kid.
Uh-huh.
And the daycare is okay with
Yeah,
it.
but.
It's tolerated. Yeah,
If the
It's
child's running,
hurling in the background.
Yes, and 40, you say, "Don't get your kid."
right.
if the child's running a temperature for sure.
What do you say, Joby?
They say low-level viral symptoms are fully accepted. They have contracts in daycares that basically say you can has this, and this, don't send them. So you could be violating a contract if you push it. But it's really what happens in daycare, if the kids sick beyond, then they'll send it back home.
Right.
It's a no.
But they infect the whole class, the whole
Exactly.
group.
The only problem is, and what's really going on in the class is if there's a kid in the class who's immunocompromised somehow. But that's really on the kid, I think, when it comes to that class.
Right.
No, it's a viral cesspool.
Oh, yeah. I mean, anytime you send your kid to daycare or kindergarten,
Yeah.
there's just like mucus all over the place. There's boogers everywhere.
Petri dish of infection.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
Rabbi,
Yeah. Yes, Marvin.
it may also be a question of contract. You have to check the terms of the kindergarten agreement you have with them.
Yeah,
It
that's
says,
exactly what Joby just said. You have to check the terms of the contract so that you're not in violation.
Right.
So they have, contracts for these basement feeder, guns, they're all over the place.
Yeah,
All over the place, and they have 30 kids in a room, that really should be 20,
yeah.
and everyone's got.
And everyone's got their
coming
boogers.
out of their nose. It's a boogie fest.
Probably there were two, right?
Oh my, oh my.
I'm sure it's.
And all the kids are eating bamba, which would never go in Canada. Because of the peanut allergies. You realize there's no peanut allergies in Israel because all the kids are exposed to this chazarai at a very young age. So you could have, like Errol said, you're boosting their immune system because that's how kids develop germ immunity, by being exposed to all those boogers. Yeah. Yeah.
So it works its way through the process.
Yeah.
So the same question could be asked, should you go to work?
Yeah.
Should the rabbi give shear?
Well, the rabbi's sufficiently distant from everybody. And yeah. So
This will become like a game show, and guess the answer.
Yeah,
Work
okay.
it out beforehand.
So he says, Reishit kol yeled sheyesh lo chom tzarich lanuach babayit ad sheyitrapeh v'lo ya'ale lo hachom v'yistakein. So the first thing is, I think someone mentioned this, don't do anything to exacerbate his condition. If your child has a fever, you got to leave him home so that you don't allow his fever to get worse. Nosaf l'kach, yesh bayab b'yeled mishta'el, secondly, if your kid is coughing, that's a problem because he could infect other children. Yeled o gadol shemishta'el yotzim lo mehapeh chaydakim she'alulim lahavir tamachla la'achirim. He says, as we all know, when a person coughs, there are, I think chaydakim are germs. Chaydakim, bacteria. That's what chaydakim are. That bacteria emanates from his mouth that could pass the sickness on to others. Upe'amim yachol lahadbik amet haganenet. And what about the ganenet, the lady, the teacher? The im hi tipol mishkav harigormim la milvad atzar shebecholi. And if she gets sick, not only are you causing her the pain of sickness, but you're also causing her ovdan yemei avodah. You're putting her out of work. So because you need to go to work, you're going to infect the teacher, and you'll make her not be able to work. V'harehu gorim hezek l'chol asovavim oto. And you're causing injury to all, you're causing damage to all the people that are around that kid. V'asur lahazik afilo yedei gram. And as we know, even though it's only causative damage, from a heavenly standpoint, you're not permitted to do that. Ve'ein lomar shahakatan eno bardat. V'lachein ein lachush l'mashu mazik acherim. And don't give me the argument, well, the child is not of a cognizant age yet. He's just a 4-year-old kid. So I'm not liable for any damage he causes. Because since the parents are the ones sending him to the gan, then you're a proxy to do an avera. In other words, it's like sending in a petri dish of bacteria into the classroom. You could say, it's not me, it's the petri dish, right? But you're the one who put it there. You're the one who dropped off your kid at gan. He says, normally we say that if, like, I send another person to do an avera, it's on him, it's not on me. But if you send a child who just listens to mommy and daddy, then you are a shliach lidvar avera. He's your proxy to commit an avera. Just no different from putting down a petri dish of bacteria on a table. And therefore, what does he say? Oh, that's it. That's it. So we, so absolutely, he says, no, you can't do it. So we're gonna have to look at the footnotes and see what the Makor Baruch says, but we'll look at that tomorrow, Mirz Hashem, okay? Have a great day.